Hey y'all, Miss Stacy here. Today we're talking about the principle of design movement. When we talk about movement in art, we're not talking about actual movement. We're talking about using the elements of art to make the viewer's eye move. So how to control where the viewer looks. And we're talking about using things like lines and shapes and space and form and color and texture, all to make the viewer's eye look where you want them to look. And usually that's a focal point. You have some place on your artwork that you want the people to look at in your artwork. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to look at some tricks to control where the viewer's eyes move, and where other artists have used these tricks to make people look where they want them to move. After we get finished with learning about movement, we'll do a little project together. Okay, movement is the placement of art elements to make the viewer's eye move. So we can make things repeat as they did in this first drawing to make the viewer's eye move. We could create implied lines like they did with the swirl in the second one to make the viewer's eye move. Or we could overlap objects that actually point in a direction like they did in the last one. So in the first one, the artist made your eyes look upward, and the second one round to the center, and in the last one downward. Okay, here we have a rectangle and a circle, and it's rather static. It's like there's no motion or movement. You're not really making the viewer's eye look anywhere. However, if we just change the direction of that rectangle and circle, we create a implied line that makes the visual pathway so that the viewer looks towards the dot. Even if you change the color of the dot, it still creates that visual pathway. Here we have three rectangles. One is horizontal, one vertical, and one diagonal. Now, the horizontal one is rather static also. There's no movement. Even if you put a dot on top of it, it's still static. There's no movement. The one that's vertical is also static. Even if you put a dot beside it down there, still no movement. However, in the diagonal rectangle, if you put a dot on top of it, it creates a tension that makes it look as if the dot is going to roll down it, and there is an implied line there that makes the viewer's eye look downward. Diagonal lines are one way to create a movement. Here we have a series of rectangles going from small to large in an increasing pattern. And what we've done is we've created two implied lines, one at the top of the rectangles and one at the bottom, and both creates visual pathways that makes the viewer's eye look down. Here we have a more complicated arrangement of shapes, but in the lines are kind of hidden. Do you see where those diagonal lines were? And there's also, in addition to the diagonal lines, we have these ovals hidden in here that get smaller as you get towards the center of the composition. And both of these creates visual pathways for the viewer to make them look inward toward the center of the composition. Okay, let's look at this little drawing. It's a little digital artwork of a house. Now here we have what we could see as an obvious focal point is the house. One way we've done that is by using contrasting colors, the red and the green, but we've also created these visual pathways here in the bushes. They point towards the house. Even the curved lines here on the horizon line points toward the house, and the top of the trees also points towards the house. So everything is creating a visual pathway leading the viewer's eye toward that focal point of the house. Okay, here we have a print by the artist Hokusai. It's often referred to as the Great Wave. A print is when an artist prints multiple copies of an artwork. This is done with a wood block. He carved it into a block of wood, put ink on it, It's like a big stamp. He stamped that ink, and then he added more ink and made another one and another one and another one. And this makes art much more economical for people to get and buy, rather than one painting that might cost $1 million. He could make multiple prints of this and sell them at a much lower price somewhere people could buy them. So you see the date is 1829 to 33. It didn't actually take him 4 years to carve it, but he made prints of it for that many years. So let's take a look at this print, often referred to as the Great Wave. The first thing you might look at would be the wave. However, the wave is not the focal point. The wave actually points to something. What do you see in the background there? Do you see that mountain in the background? That mountain is called Mount Fuji. And this wave actually points to the mountain in the background. Even the spray that looks like little drops of snow actually fall onto that mountain in the background. And that would be our focal point. So the artist uses the waves and even the boats to guide you up to the waves, to point the eyes, to move your eyes towards the focal point of Mount Fuji. Okay, let's look at this oil painting by George Bellows, done in 1909. It is of a boxing match at Starkey's. Here the artist uses lines of motion that actually point towards the focal point of the boxers' faces where the blow is occurring. The lines of motion are implied by the legs and the arms of the people. In addition to the lines of motion, the artist uses something called the line of sight, and that is where people are actually looking directly at the focal point, pointing towards them. It makes the viewer's eye move towards that focal point as well. In the bottom left-hand corner, you could see a figure that's actually turned around and looking at the viewer, kind of drawing you in and making you feel like you're a part of it as you're there. Let's look at this Cubist painting done by Marcel Duchamp in 1912. It's a Cubist painting. It's called Nude Descending a Staircase. In this painting, there is a series of overlapping images going in a downward motion. You see them overlapping one another. It's a bunch of different shapes. It kind of looks like a jumbled mess, but it's actually figures, abstract figures going in a downward motion, overlapping one another. And if you look really hard at it and you study it, can you kind of see the image? He used a model and like took a series of photographs or whatever and tried to recreate that image of a person descending a staircase. So you get that diagonal downward motion. Here we have a pastel done by Edward Degas in 1878. Degas was an Impressionist artist. What the Impressionists did was they tried to capture a moment in time, an impression of a moment of time, sort of like a pre-camera thing, if you will. Edward Degas was famous for his ballerinas. And here he uses the lines of motion to point you towards the focal point, the prima ballerina, her face there, as well as the bright contrasting colors. He kind of uses the figures in the background are blurred. He also uses the line of sight here by people looking directly at the prima ballerina over on the right-hand side, as well as the little girl behind her. She's looking at her as well. Now we're going to create an artwork that is much like Marcel Duchamp's Nude Descending a Staircase. It's going to repeat over and over. We're going to start out by drawing a simple object. I'm doing a butterfly. You could do whatever you like. And we're going to make a little template. After you get through drawing it, you're just going to cut it out. Okay, after you cut it out, just put it up in like the top corner and trace around it. Take your time. If you want to do it with a pencil first and then go over the line with the pen, you can. Move it over to the side a little, and you're going to trace around it again, but you're not going to draw inside that original design that you drew. Just draw on the outside of it so that you're drawing the outside edges. You see how I left the inside of that? And you're going to repeat this process over and over again, moving it a little bit each time and never drawing inside of the others. You could move yours from one side of the page to the other. If you want to do it at a diagonal, that's fine. If you want to do it going down, it kind of depends on what your subject is. Don't feel like you have to do a butterfly because I did one. Keep on until it just goes right off of the page. Now once you finish, you're going to want to go back and add details. Going to put some little dots, and you're going to put those details in each one. Now it's time to add colors. We're going to want to make the top one, maybe use darker colors on the top ones, and as you go farther back, make the colors a little lighter. Not press down as hard. Make sure you add your shadows and all of that. And pressing down a little less hard on these ones. Make sure you choose a subject that you enjoy. Don't feel like you have to do a butterfly because I did, for goodness sake. Choose your own subject. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the principle of design movement, and I hope you enjoy doing this project. I can't wait to see what you create. Make sure you send me photos of your work.